First item of business is the adoption of the agenda, which has been circulated in draft form. Can I have a mover, please?
So moved.
Trustee Grenham, seconder.
Second.
Trustee Campbell. Any discussion, comments on the agenda? Nope. Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. You'll remember this is the part of the agenda that we believe is formality and doesn't need discussion, but there may be something in there that somebody wishes to bring forward for discussion, drop off the consent agenda, bring back onto the regular board agenda. If that is the case, please let me know.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded. Trustee Gillum seconds. All in favor? Thank you. Correspondence forwarded from the board to the minister. Oh, I beg your pardon. No. Adoption of the regular meeting. Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay. The next item is the report of the in-camera meeting. We had a substantial in-camera meeting discussing personnel issues. That's all I can say on that. Next item is the presentation by BC Hydro, Mr. Wayne Cousins. And we will have him introduced by our own Mr. Heavy.
We're very fortunate this evening to have Mr. Wayne Cousins here. He's an account representative from BC Hydro. And he has the great pleasure of looking after all the education sections. And there's or sectors. There's also folks that look after health. But he has been guiding us probably for the last 5 years and how we managed to get our projects through. And what's been fantastic about the support we've had through Wayne is that while he's working for Hydro, he always seems to be getting Hydro money to us. Finding a way to make our projects work, so we're really indebted to the support that he's given to us. We've fostered a great relationship over the past year. He's worked really closely with Brett as our energy manager and made a lot of great things happen. We had a quarterly meeting today, talked about all the money we're going to save over the coming years because of the work we've done. So I think it's really timely, given our transition in the energy management plan, to have Wayne here to speak to us for a few minutes. So.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Ian. And good evening, everyone. This is Board Chair, fellow board members, staff, and guests. As Ian was saying, my role is to work with BC Hydro and support school districts all across the province and to help all of you save money on your electricity bill, conserve energy, help make your schools more energy efficient, and create what we call conservation cultures. And what I would like to do this evening is share with you some of the success that you may not know about that your school district has achieved over the past several years, and to highlight some of the ways in which your school district is really special. And BC Hydro has had a great relationship with your district for many years, and we're looking forward to a continued great relationship. But I wanted to give some acknowledgement and some recognition tonight. And one of the things that I think both of our organizations have in common is that we both have a commitment to energy efficiency, sustainability, and conservation, and we both like to engage our organizations in meaningful ways. And your school district has been doing that so well for so many years. And what I would like to mention is that I have the pleasure of traveling all across the province. I meet with school districts on a regular basis. And not all of them have the same commitment and the same focus and have had the same success that you have had here in Comox Valley. They tackle things in different ways, but they don't have the strategic approach that you have and that you've taken. And back in 2009, the Comox Valley School District did something that I think was really key. You became involved in BC Hydro's Energy Manager program. And since then, your school district has had some very significant success. And I'll identify that for those of you who are bottom line oriented. If you think of how much electricity your organization has saved since you started becoming a partner in our Energy Manager program, your school district has saved 2,810,000 kilowatt hours of electricity in that period of time. Now, in plain English, what that means is that's the equivalent of about 255 Comox Valley homes. The amount of electricity they would use in a year, you save that much here in your school district. And that's very significant. You've also, under the leadership of your manager of energy conservation, Fred McGregor, you've made your school district energy efficient in so many ways. Every one of your facilities, whether it's a school, whether it is a work facility, has all been upgraded in lighting, whether it's inside, outside, motion sensors. So the school facilities themselves operate more energy efficiently than they used to. You've also done other activities, such as creating your Energy Reduction Incentive Program, or ERIP, and that accounts for 5% of the savings that you enjoy every year. You've traded principals and vice principals about how to be more energy efficient in terms of teachers and students. Your facility staff, operations, maintenance, they're all looking out for ways in which they can conserve. Your ERIP program, in fact, has rewarded young people for doing energy efficiency projects to the tune of $12,000 since the program started. And then you've taken that money, and the students have reinvested that into more projects, which save you more money. But I think what's really special, as I said, is the conservation culture that you've established in your organization. You've installed solar panels at Cuban Park Elementary School and real-time display in the lobby so kids and teachers and visitors to the school can check out how that school is consuming electricity at any given time. You've installed solar collector systems on the roof of Mark Eisfeld Secondary. And you continue to promote your Energy Bear conservation campaign by newsletters and updates. And I know Fred has visited every school on a regular basis to connect with the principals and vice principals and tell them how they're doing so that they know firsthand what it means. Your students have redesigned the marquee sign a few years back at GP Van Mee School with energy-efficient LED lights. So the kids that did that, maybe they graduated by now, but they drive by and say, you know what, I did that when I was going to that school, and I made a difference. And in fact, that school saves $600 in electricity every year because of the innovation and the creativity of those students. And Fred helped foster that innovation among the young people in your school district. And there's another thing that you've done, which is a green challenge. Imagine a school district coming up with the idea of a challenge that rewards schools for being the greenest within the district, and then takes it to another level and involves the business community and students going home to their families and challenging their families to be greener. And the winning family was awarded with an energy-efficient vehicle to use for a year. That's really connecting the schools with the families, with the communities, and the business community. What are the bottom line results of energy efficiency in your school district? Well, since 2009, your district uses 21% less electricity than it did 4 years ago. You've avoided spending $450,000 on energy in that period of time. And as a result of Fred's leadership, when you talk about the money, and Ian alluded to it earlier, $1,635,000 has come into this district from organizations such as BC Hydro, Fortis, Natural Resources Canada, Solar BC, and different government programs, because Fred and his team has gone out and found that money. And we're really proud and pleased that we can help sponsor and fund many of the conservation projects that you've initiated. So in addition to saving money, you've got schools and facilities that are better environments to teach in, they're better environments to learn in, they're better lit, they're better heated. And you also know that when you keep your assets up to date, that's cost savings that you won't have to incur because your plant facilities are maintained and they work at peak efficiency. So to sum up, what it takes to be successful is a recipe that you found right here. First of all, it takes senior management commitment, and you've always had that. At the board level, we've always had the support of Superintendent Sherry Elwood. We have had an organization that takes a strategic look at it by being proactive when it comes to environmental stewardship, by implementing policies and actions so everybody knows that you're going in the right direction all at the same time. You take advantage of training so that everyone who works in the organization knows what to look for and how to do their jobs most energy efficiently. And also, you educate students and teachers about how to use energy more wisely. You have this partnership with BC Hydro, so you have the energy ambassadors, which are students that encourage other kids to adopt energy efficient projects. You're also a Power Smart partner, so you get the incentives from us whenever you can. And the Energy Manager Program. As I say, we have co-funded the Energy Manager Program to the tune of $491,000 since Fred's come on board. And that's a two-way partnership. It's worked well for us, it's worked well for you. But it takes a committed team. And as I say, you have a champion at senior management. You also have had the support of someone who knows the value of a dollar and knows that saving money is important when it comes to the bottom line. And you've had that in Secretary Treasurer Russell Horsfall. You've also had a gentleman who has been an advocate from day one in your Director of Operations, Ian Hesselgrave, because you understand the benefit of maintaining the assets. And you've also had the support of the board members, teachers, vice principals, principals, operations, maintenance, IT staff, PAC groups. Everyone's involved in this conservation culture, and certainly you've had the support of students who are really passionate because this is their part in saving the planet. But I think the thing that you've done that was probably the smartest move you made was in 2009, you decided that Fred McGregor was going to be your manager of energy conservation. And I work with energy managers from school districts all across the province, and you got one of the best. And he has achieved so many things in so many ways. You've initiated new technologies, innovative practices. The things you're doing here in Courtenay Comox are being copied by school districts all across the province. And that man over there has shared his expertise. He has mentored other energy managers. He's given his advice and his wisdom to other school districts. People love working with Fred. And if you've worked with him, you know why. He cares, he's passionate, he's committed, he's dedicated. And he has done a great job for your organization. He's also represented you well in different parts of the province. He's worked on behalf of your school district, he's presented on behalf of your school district at provincial conferences, at regional workshops. He's very giving of his time and his energy to other people. He's the first to volunteer. We have a group of energy managers that has a monthly phone call that I chair. And we had that December call just last week. And that was when Fred announced that he was retiring. And one by one throughout the call, all the people said, Fred, we're going to miss you. You've done a terrific job. If you talk about legacy when you leave a career, it's what you leave behind, what people think of you. People think a lot of Fred McGregor. And he's going to be missed. He's going to be missed on our team, and I know he's going to be missed on your team. And that's why I wanted to be here in person tonight to tell you from BC Hydro's point of view that you have done such a wonderful job. And you've all done it together under some great leadership. So I'm really proud and I'm really pleased to be able to present Fred with a token of our appreciation, which is a plaque for him to keep. But I just want to say, Fred, even since you announced your retirement, and I've known about it for several months, you've kept investing your time and your energy and passion in energy conservation. And folks, you may know some people who have announced their retirement and then they start coasting. And they say, you know what, it doesn't matter anymore. Up until this morning, Fred was submitting paperwork to BC Hydro to get the last dollars in the project from our company. That's dedication. And that's the kind of guy we have loved to work with for 4 years. So, Fred, I want to congratulate you and thank you for a wonderful work experience with you, for all the things you've done for this community, for the school district, and the kids that are going to remember you for a long time because of what they learned from you. So congratulations and thank you.
great legacy, and I hope it carries on. And with all of you helping, and especially BC Hydro, and you wouldn't believe the team that we have created outside of this organization with these guys, engineers and creative people and videographers and all the things that go into not just the technical part of it, but the people part of it, right? It's all about changing people, changing attitudes, and that's the future, right? And we need to carry that on. So again, it's been my pleasure, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next item is the...
You don't have to stay for the whole meeting.
No. We have to stay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you. Wayne, and Fred, I was going to ask you if I could just say, Fred, you'll hear a speech about you at the retirement functions, I know. But as you leave tonight, the piece that I want to just underscore and add to, this is part of our reason of having you here tonight, is the piece that has been most beneficial for the school district, including everything that Wayne has shared, is how great you are with students. You do not leave with us not telling you that we've noted from the very beginning how engaged you are with students and how much they respect the work that you do. I've never heard anything but respect and admiration, and they just genuinely work well with you and they appreciate everything you've done. It's not often that you can be very efficient at the very beginning, and from the very first time you started going into our schools, the feedback we were getting back from schools was, wow, he's amazing with kids. And that's been the key to our success. So that's the gift you leave us with, and we want to thank you. This is his last night. In fact, at 5 o'clock today, or he doesn't owe us anything anymore. So thank you very much for coming, Fred. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Trustee Caton,
So,
education.
right, there's no December Education Committee meeting because we have so many winter concert activities that many of us attended. I was able to attend half a dozen myself, and I was totally amazed at the performance of our students from our kindergartens right through grade 7s. I know my granddaughter was out there doing a bit of a flash dance, and Director Douglas was telling me, put her skirt down, put her skirt down. But it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable to watch those little guys and little girls up there singing and dancing. So that's one of the reasons why we don't have a meeting in December, and I'm sure the trustees have gone to other concerts and enjoyed the wonderful activities, and our music teachers have just doing a phenomenal job in the hours they spend with our kids. So it's really wonderful to see. Our next meeting will be at Courtney Elementary School, I believe, Mr. DeMeo, that's where you've got it going?
Correct.
Okay, it's 6:30, Tuesday, January the 14th. We'll have the agenda Friday night prior to what's on the agenda, and once again, the public is welcome to attend. We welcome you out. And that's it, because there's really nothing else to say, unless other trustees want to talk about their experience regarding some of the Christmas or winter concerts or activities. And they've all been very good. I know that Airport Elementary's got a fun fair tomorrow night, and they're looking for people to come out and celebrate. So,
Okay, thank you. And on to bottom of the page, the education update by the superintendent.
This is a continuation of a bit of a conversation that I started with the board and the gallery at the last meeting. I just wanted to bring people up to date because I suspect you'll hear a little bit about this over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks, particularly with news articles I suspect that will come out of the Lower Mainland. We talked and have talked previously about in the new framework for learning in the BC Ed Plan, of course, that it will require a new way of assessing students. So we talked a little bit about that, and we're going to be talking about that in greater depth at Education Committee. And as we look at the new curriculum, we'll be joining together educators, teachers, principals, vice principals, some senior leaders to look at the new ways of learning and knowing that we need to be able to offer our students. One of the first things that you'll probably see and would expect to see, however, is a shift in what we know as the traditional provincial exam system, for lack of a better word of describing it, which has gone through a metamorphosis significantly in the last couple of 3 years, where in many of, I'm looking around the room at the ages of most of us will remember a provincial exam schedule, which some of us are old enough to remember that you were either referred, you had to write exams, or you weren't. and you got away with that, and you got to apply for scholarships. And then we went to a place where all students were having to have at least 5 exams to finish their grade 12 year. And then we moved to where most exams were optional, and we've gotten to a place where really, outside of social study, the grade 10 exams, which in this room are new to us, but have been around for about 7 or 8 years now, I suspect you'll see a significant shift in grade 10 provincial exams. The feedback from the field, consistently for the last number of years around provincial exams, is that the burden for grade 10s around provincial exams is unwieldy. That having that many exams in 1 year is not good practice, doesn't do much other than test a student's test-taking ability. Certainly doesn't capture what they know, and I'm hearing at the committees that I sit on a significant appetite on the part of the ministry to look at the whole grade 10 provincial exams differently. What has evolved is that in grade 11, there is social studies 11, and then in grade 12 right now what stands is one of the language arts exams as a required exam. Communications 12, First Peoples 12, English 12, or English 12 as we know. And so what we have in the course of a very short period of time, after 45 years of doing it roughly the same way, we've gone to where we have gone from as many as 28 exams having to be offered by a school district down to a significantly less amount. In fact, probably in some districts, and my colleague in the north, they'll end up with the number of courses that they're running only offering 3 grade 12 exams in one semester, a math 12, a French 12, and an English 12 of some kind. So what that signals is that over the course of the next 2 years, there will be serious debate about what provincial exams look like, when they should occur, should they be paper-based, should they be electronic. There's been a shift in the last 3 years that more of the exams are electronic only, and it's rare that you can't, right now it's rare that you can't, you can choose writing only. Most of the time you have to offer both. And the ministry, of course, would like to move to electronic exams for all kinds of reasons around efficiency, cost, and their ability to have various versions of exams available in the course of one exam period. The reason I'm signaling to you this is that, for reasons I'm not totally sure about, it has become a spotlight of discussion on the Lower Mainland as they are moving to a calendar that we've adopted in the last 2 years, for sure, started even 3 years ago, around the exam schedule. What we used to call the exam weeks, and we now call the assessment weeks. And so with Bill 36 and a requirement around hours of instruction, and the fact that the number of exams that we have to offer has been significantly reduced, and the fact that there are many more windows for students to choose to write exams in the course of the year, because many of them are going electronic. So where we would normally have 1 or 2 or 3 students in the entire district writing in November, or in April, now we're having a significant more number of students writing in the November and the April, which they're allowed to do, or even in the August, and those are electronic exams. What you're going to see, and that's why I'm signaling it, is a debate about, I suspect, provincial exams in general. Is that good assessment strategy? Why do we do it? Do we do it simply to screen for the universities? And we might, and the universities are looking at what they're asking for now. And what that looks like. Are they going to ask for a portfolio assessment? A student would bring a portfolio about their learning plus exam marks, and that's where some of the universities are moving to. So what I'm signaling is that we will be part of a provincial conversation. I'm sitting on some provincial committees as a superintendent, and I'll bring back what I'm hearing from that level of discussion. We'll be having conversations with teachers about provincial exams. We'll be talking to principals, vice principals. We'll be talking to parents. And most importantly, we'll be talking to students about what we can give as feedback to a draft document that I suspect is coming somewhere soon about provincial exams. And so I'm just giving trustees a heads up, because I suspect it's going to hit the Vancouver Sun and the province as they deal with it on the Lower Mainland. And I just wanted to let you know that we are 2 years ahead a little bit, because we saw this coming, and for reasons that were our own, we wanted to move in a different direction around assessment. That doesn't mean that there won't be provincial exams if they're mandated by the ministry, but even the ministry saying that they're going to look different, and that they're going to be more flexible, that ideally for us, if they continue to exist, when I was asked, well, what would work best for your district, I said, if we have to have provincial exams, then what we'd like is the ability to basically pull them out of cyberspace when we need them for our kids, when it is best for them to write them. And they can do that. They can write different versions so that we can actually tailor that exam schedule for our students in a way that makes sense for us and not because it's on a provincial calendar that doesn't work for us, which has historically happened, right? So, and I suspect the ministry is moving to something like that. So that's my heads up about provincial exams coming soon to our district. For people who have students in grades 8 and 9, the reality of provincial exams will look very different when they hit grade 10, 11, and 12 than it does today. So that's my verbal update on provincial exams.
Thank you.
That's where we are. And somehow I'm on the committee.
Next item is trustee committee appointments. I've asked for this to be put on. There are a couple of recommendations. We are in the process of updating our committee structure. The first recommendation is with regard to the Education Committee, which is chaired by Trustee Caton. I would hope that somebody would be prepared to move that recommendation, get it on the floor for discussion.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. And the seconder? Thank you. If I may,
You may start.
the Education Committee is ruled by board bylaws, and so if we want to make it serve more than one purpose, we have to change the bylaws. The notion is that the Education Committee is a committee of the whole, meets in public, chaired by the vice chair. The notion is that on occasion, when the board is considering new policies, that committee would address the policy as a committee of the whole and in public. The discussion we've had in our working sessions has revolved around whether or not we wanted a subset of the board to discuss policy issues and then bring them to the whole board for a second round of discussion. The general view, I think, was that we did not want to do twice around the mulberry bush with those issues. We wanted to have a committee of the whole. This would be a necessary enabling step for that to happen. So if the board wants to move in that direction, then this is a necessary recommendation.
And add to that, because it's the Education Committee is a public committee, we invite the public to attend. On those instances where we happen to redraft a policy where we're looking at partners coming in there, we would do an ad hoc committee where we'd have the communities, those certain members of where like this certain policy we'd have to have parents or that would be an ad hoc committee subject to that where they would go and they would do that, but it'd be part of the public process because we are a committee, public, whether it's teachers, CBTA, QP, or parents or principals, or that we would have that option of having an ad hoc committee which would take that policy and go away. So it's not that we're doing it all of it, but we can follow the process we're doing now. We're just sort of streamlining it because when we had our working session, our governance session, we as a board talked about that doing it 2 or 3 times and just coming back as committee of the whole and then doing it once. And we were reviewing our policies. So this is a recommendation that came out of our governance session talking about looking at how we were reviewing our policy committee and our policies and our committee of the whole policies.
Trustee Green.
So this, the expectation here would be the committee of the whole would approve new policy, and so it would not come to the board?
It would come to the board.
It would come to
As
the
a
board.
recommendation from
As
the
a
committee of the whole.
recommendation. Okay. I just wanted some clarification on that. Thank you.
Anything further?
Can
Yes. Trustee McDonald.
we currently have a policy committee?
Yep.
What's the matter?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we have a policy on creation of policy, which has the policy committee inside that. It would continue to exist. The policies that were talked about in the Education Policy Committee would likely be referred to the Policy Committee. I suspect if they dealt with board governance matters, they might not be referred, but if they were systems issues. So that policy continues in force and in effect and will be in unless the board were to do something with that. So likely the process we're talking here would be for those issues that are wanting to have a bigger discussion on, having them at the Policy Education Committee, a referral to the Policy Committee for stakeholder input, and then it would come back to the board table for ratification.
Okay, so if I get it, it's not much different than what we're doing now where that discussion's at the board meeting as a whole. Then, and we have two types of things. One's a revision of existing policy and one's development of new policy on emerging issues. So the Education Committee would be the place in which we sort of discuss an issue, broad direction set, referral to a subcommittee or the policy committee for drafting and referral and input. And then, of course, a decision about whether, which piece is the policy piece and which piece are management regulations that support it. And then the vote. Well, and obviously we have more time for more discussion as to whether this makes a change or an improvement over what we're doing now. Yeah, interesting idea.
Trustee Graham?
I'm confused here, because if we're going to have an education policy committee, but we're still going to maintain a policy advisory committee, and then we're still going to come to the board, are we not just adding another step in the process of adopting policies?
I think two different kinds of policies being discussed here. The one that would go to the committee of the whole would be one that required a public discussion. The policy advisory committee meets in private, right?
Okay, but you did say that there would be some decisions that would be referred to the policy committee. You would, in my mind, you would already, if there was an issue, it would have to be referred ahead of time rather than having that discussion.
I think what the board chair is talking about is we would have the policy committee of the whole, and we have a policy committee which would be the ad hoc subcommittee of that, which we refer to it. So yes, we will have that, but it would be the ad hoc committee. We still have it would be a smaller committee. I believe that was your intent, and that it would still go to that committee, but that would be for those items that you'd have those private conversations, then it would come back to the committee. That's, I believe, the direction that you were looking at. So we would have the committee of the whole, the policy committee of the whole, to have that generalized conversation. We have more time to have public consultation, and the recommendation coming back to the board. And in those cases where there was items that had to go back to a sub-policy committee, where you'd have those private conversations, that would be the policy committee that you're referring to. Am I correct?
So supplementary, so I would expect that the recommendation would come back, but also make a recommendation on the structure of the policy committee. Thank you.
Trustee Webb?
Just based on the discussion, I'm wondering about pausing. I certainly appreciate the briefing of it. It's helpful, but I don't know if we're able to sort of fully understand the track that is being laid here, and perhaps allowing for a longer narrative that can speak to that at some future date. Just a thought.
Trustee McConnell?
I'm just trying, I think I have the same issue to start with, that we actually, our practice now is an issue comes up that's presented from senior management that there's need to review, revisit a policy that is problematic, or we have a new issue arising that we want to see a policy developed on. I've brought it forward myself. And then we have our usual fairly short discussion within the board meeting and a decision whether to refer it or not. I was on the policy committee at the time when several really key policies were worked on. It's a good format. There's a smaller group. There's a role for senior management and those partner groups, and the referral process is managed there. But there was direction from the board to start with. What running it through the education committee, I'm thinking, would mean that we could have a larger discussion than our 5 minutes. Each person speaks once on it in terms of the direction that is given and that overview, so that an education committee meeting discussion of it might be half an hour, might be a full hour, depending on what the issue is. So we have a better time to hash out and give direction there and get information. Is that right? Is that?
Yes, perhaps there's a step that's being missed here. We have appointed a group of strategic committees, right? And each trustee is a member of at least one of those. And those strategic committees will be carrying forward the work that we've been doing over the last 2 years. And each of those committees will probably be making recommendations, policy recommendations, which have been discussed in committee, but would need to be discussed by the whole board at some way, as you say, at some way. So my expectation is that most of the work of the committee of the whole would revolve around recommendations coming from the strategic committees that we've now established. I'm sorry if that wasn't made clear before. Trustee Grimm?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not you just should change the name. I mean, just classify it as committee of the whole with education policy as part of that, because the way you've got an education policy committee, you just call it committee of the whole once a month. That's fine, and you know, and it includes education, it includes policy, et cetera, et cetera.
We're bound by our own bylaws, so we can't do that.
Okay.
Sorry. Any further on that? Ready? No? Ready for the question? Oh, I beg your pardon.
Could I just speak and
sorry.
just offer some support is what I'm. What you could do is move ahead on a motion that would endorse in principle for further reflection the ideas that you've heard about, and senior staff could work with the board chair, maybe the vice chair as well, and we could, for the next meeting, just work on a briefing note that would show the clearer lines, would give some examples and some scenarios about how this new model may work, and at that point, and we could do a comparison of what we currently have and and do a flow chart of how policy starts and where it ends, and do a flowchart diagram of what this now proposes, so that at the next meeting you can have a fulsome discussion about what we currently have as opposed to this new option with it all fleshed out, and then you can make a final decision about whether or not you want to change. We could help with that if you like between now and the next meeting.
I think that would be helpful. Yeah. Anything further? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Motion carried. The second of the new committees is the Student Health Committee. It seems to me that we have lots of emerging issues around student health. Active student travel is only one of them. Student fitness is another. Mental health issues are always present. So that it would be a useful idea to have one of our ad hoc committees at least charged with looking at these issues. Again, it's a matter of a recommendation that needs to be turned into a motion. If
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Katie,
Second that.
Trustee McDonald. Any discussion, comment? Trustee Webber?
I like the idea you brought forward. I'm wondering about it being framed as an ad hoc committee, because that presupposes it has a shelf life for a period of time, and if that's the case, that's fine. I think we ought to be clear right from the start as to what our markers are in terms of when we have achieved what we believe we should have achieved. It doesn't preclude throughout the course of the ad hoc committee running that we can pause at any time and formalize it as a regular committee of the board. That's what we need. But just wanted to flag that as an ad hoc, we run the risk of ad hoc continuing forever and ever without clarity as to the goal.
Well, it wasn't my expectation that this would be a committee that went on forever and ever. I do think that there's immediate work to be done. Once we get that work done, turned into board policy, then it may well be that the board would decide they don't need that committee anymore. Any further comment? No. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Next item is Vanier's artificial turf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 12 of your package, 12 and 13, is a briefing note that I prepared. Many months ago, we had a discussion with you about the possibility of having a artificial turf field built on the GP Vanier site, where our current hardcore, I know I said hardcore, didn't I? On our current site where the gravel field is. What you have in your package is a summary of the content of the agreement. We spared you the 30 pages of 8-point font, provide you with a briefing note summary. As you can see, the agreement is going to be between the school district and the regional district. It will deal with the initial capital cost, which we're projecting at $1.4 million. At the end of the day, the school district will be the owner of the field, and we will have a ongoing agreement with the regional district on cost sharing for the maintenance of it. Access to the site is really being driven around school hours and the needs of the soccer association. So for most of the year, we will have access as a school, any of our schools, to the site from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5:30. There are some special arrangements during our winter months because, of course, everybody wants to get on it during the winter months. So during the December, January, February months, we have a 50-50 sharing of the time slots with the soccer association so that they too can have some good use during our wet times. If by chance we would like to book the field outside of the school times, we can have it for free unless there was a rental that had to be canceled, in which case we would then reimburse the regional district for the lost revenue on the rental. Now the good news is we share the rental income, so anything that we pay, we get half of it back. And any rental income that's received will actually help offset the annual maintenance costs for the field as well. The top of page 13, point 4, deals with the future capital repairs. So we anticipate that this asset will have a 22 to 25-year life, and that about in the middle of it we'll have to replace the carpet, the artificial grass. And that projected cost is about $400,000 to $500,000. As we did with the running track, we've just recently done that, where we replaced the running track. We shared 50-50 on that, and we're bringing forward the proposal that we would share the cost as well. You can see that in the bottom, the Soccer Association has agreed to sign a subcontract, a sub-agreement, where they are going to provide $400,000 of the capital cost towards the $1.4 million project, and in doing so they get preferential booking, free access, what have you, so a good situation for them. And there's a provision in there, bullet 8, where 10 years out, if they wish to renew their commitment, they can provide $125,000 towards that mid-life replacement, which would, if they did, would bring our cost down by 75, whatever half of 125,000 is. So the regional district has engaged the project consultants. A lot of work has been happening, and we are ready to move forward. The regional district will be considering this agreement at their January meeting. So what you said to us was, go away, work on an agreement, and bring it back to us. So we're bringing it back to you. And there's a recommendation in there, recommended motion, that says that the Board of Education approve the joint use and maintenance agreement between the Comox Valley Regional District and School District Number 71, Comox Valley, for the artificial turf field located on George P. Vanier Secondary School site. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
So I have a question regarding the agreement.
Perhaps could we get a motion to put...
This is actually on this briefing note rather than a motion, but that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
It's looking at the agreement here. The one thing I don't see a clarification, I know that on weekends we have a lot of Vancouver Island track meets where soccer meets, and I know that the soccer clubs also has weekends on that one. Mm-hmm. priority-wise, if our, say, Vanier or Isfield or something was having a district-wide soccer meet, would that take precedent over the soccer club and their weekend soccer meet? I just don't see that clarification on here.
What we've established, because it's hard to define what the outcome of that discussion would be, is we've established an operational committee that has 2 representatives from the school district and 2 representatives from the regional district, with observer status from the city and the town and the soccer association to manage all of those potential conflicts. So what the document talks about is that best efforts will be made to accommodate, and that a lot of notice should be provided so that there's time to manage the schedule. We do envision that the soccer association will want the field during school times. They might be hosting a provincial tournament of some form, or as you say, the school may want it. And so that mandate was put off to the operational committee to find an acceptable solution.
Thank you.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Trustee Weber? This is a complicated agreement, I think. Any further questions, discussions?
And again, maybe just that I'm reading it wrong. In the briefing note, 4A and 4D both speak to a 22 to 25-year lifespan.
Correct.
D says that we're not committed to an asset replacement when the entire field needs replacement 22 to 25 years out. Is that the same time frame, or because we are saying that we are replacing midway, like
right.
capital costs?
That's right. So the way the agreement is that it anticipates midway through that 22 to 25 years, the 10 to 12 years, that there will be a $400,000 to $500,000 refresh of the carpet. And then at the end of the life of the asset, which would be at the end of the second year of the replacement carpet, that there's no commitment to replacement at that time. And the logic for that is quite often the base that's underneath the carpet is broken down by the end of the 25 years, and it's a complete refresh. So it's probably a $1.8 million project if we had to do a complete refresh.
Any further questions on that?
Yeah, well, both from a school district perspective and a Vermont Valley perspective, it's about time we got a turf field in the valley for the use of both the schools and the Comox Valley. It's just about time.
Anything further?
Maybe, Mr. Chair, just a closing comment, I suppose, to recognize how good it has been to work with the city and the town and the regional district and the soccer association. This is it has been a complex agreement, and it's a complex project, but it's been a lot of fun working with them, and I think some good work's been done.
Okay. Call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Thank you. And the next item is the superintendent's reviews.
I would point trustees, if I could, to page 14 of the board package of the gallery. It's a busy time of year, and I'll speak just briefly about what you see in text, and I believe, I haven't seen it, but I believe there was an article perhaps in both papers, or for certainly one paper, I think it was today or just recently. I don't get the paper all the time, I have to be honest with you, so I'm sometimes behind. I've spoken to you previously about the Destination Imagination invitation for our students, specifically the Valley students. We're invited by the Chinese government and then the global organization for Destination Imagination to compete in China. It was called the National Geographic Extreme Challenge. It's a partnership between Destination Imagination, the Chinese government, and the National Geographic, who have never partnered before with the Destination Imagination folks. And part of what their excitement was about was the fact that this is a problem-solving, critical thinking, collaboration curriculum. And one of the things they're looking to do worldwide is to engage students in conservation critical thinking. And so it made sense that they would connect themselves to the DI curriculum, because these are their hope is that these are the people who are going to be the scientists, be the biologists, be the naturalist photographers, those folks that will go in the wild and look to conserve the flora, the fauna, the animals that we're just knowing about. In fact, in China, while they were there, they had discovered another form of leopard, and they just found one that they knew had lived for thousands of years in China, and only 5 years previously had found the first photograph of it. And that was actually the challenge that our students received. Our students received a challenge that they were to present in 5 minutes the solution to a research assignment in the jungles of China to be able to find a photo and photograph the colored leopard. This is a rare leopard just discovered in China for the first time five years ago. And part of what they were to present was that they had to build a camera that could be articulated remotely so that they would not disturb the environment. They had to research about this colored leopard. They had to present their research in 5 minutes with an event inside the presentation that showed that their camera worked and took a photograph of a colored leopard. And they had to do all of this in a fine arts presentation. So it had to have theater, it had to have costume, it had to do. They received their challenge at 8 o'clock on the Saturday morning, and they presented at 9 o'clock in the morning on the Sunday. It was quite a challenge for them. There were I think there were 41 other teams that they were competing against in this National Geographic Exchange Challenge. Most of them were senior students, though there were a couple of teams that looked like middle school students. For the students that were competing from China, to get to this competition, over 200,000 students had competed in China to get to become a team to compete in this. There were students from, it looked to be about 65 American students. There was a Polish team. There was a team from Japan. And there was another international team from Poland. I think there was a French team as well. And there were 7 Canadians. And those 7 Canadians came from the Comox Valley. This team was Canada. So it was quite an event. I'm speaking with enthusiasm because I was there. I got to be a supervisor. I was there for another reason too, and another reason as well, but I got to go to the Destination Imagination and be a chaperone and a supervisor for the team, and it was a spectacular event. You would have been proud to be a Comox Valley citizen. You would have been proud to be a Canadian, because they were just rock stars. They were the best ambassadors for Canada you could ever imagine. They were mobbed. They were so kind, and they had such a nice way about them that they became the celebrities of the whole event, and they were absolutely humbled by it and quite a little taken aback. And they were polite and full of humor, and the Chinese folks are very excited about new people and Westerners, and we all experience that. And they don't have the same space and boundary cultural issues that we have. And so they present themselves very clearly excited about who you are, and they want their picture taken with you, or they want to practice their English with you. And these kids were these are very bright, gifted students that make it to this piece. And they were engaging with our students all the time, and our students were magic with them. They were never too busy. They were never too they would get a little, like, people were taking pictures all the time, but they were magic with them. And so I have to tell you, not only did they win and place and really, really were the benchmark, the Chinese government official described them as the benchmark for the entire competition. So that was a pretty proud moment for Gerald Bussell and I. But they were the best ambassadors you could possibly want. So it was an honor to be with them. It was an amazing event, and I think it's the lady from Destination Imagination. She's absolutely accurate in that they became the benchmark for DI in China and the world. So it was quite an amazing thing. In between, they got to go and stay. We have an affiliation with the Maple Leaf International Schools. Part of what I was doing was working for International Ed there. And one of our former vice principals, Mr. George Biggs, is a principal at a Maple Leaf school in Shanghai. And one of the best parts for our students was they went and spent 4 days teaching DI curriculum to the Chinese students in this international school. And they had the time of their life. And they stayed in the residences, and they lived in the Chinese culture, and they had Chinese buddies that they were inseparable, and they made really strong friendships, and that the people cried when they left, and they had just a terrific time. So it was quite eye-opening world sort of event for our students, and it was a pretty amazing experience. So just wanted to share that with you. You would be proud of them. And just wanted to note that yesterday we had another amazing event in our district. Many of you were at the Aboriginal Enhancement Signing Ceremony, and it was a lovely ceremony. Some amazing talent on the stage. Wonderful partnership between the AEC and the Board of Education. I'm hoping everybody went away from that feeling good about the work, feeling good about the goals that have been set, and certainly feeling good about the spotlight is really on students, that the document is all about students. It's what it should be. And as we move forward, it'll be the map that we use to co-govern in terms of trustees, and also to co-lead in terms of learning on the part of senior staff, a direction for Aboriginal students, which will enhance the lives of all students. So that was a great day for us. And just wanted to say that if you didn't get a chance to see the news, once again at Cole Putledge Park, in there, Everyone Deserves a Smile. Cole Putledge Park produced over 600 bags for the homeless. I got a picture from I believe Kevin Reimer, the principal of the Cole Putledge Park, drove the truck to the east side of Vancouver with Chantel, Stefan, the teacher, and a number of volunteers. Not only did they create enough bags for folks in the Comox Valley, and Nanaimo, and Victoria, they also took bags over to the east side of Vancouver, because I think there were 663 bags. That included mitts and warm and hats and food, and a card that a little one had created, and a bag that was decorated, and toiletries, and the staple things that folks that are on the streets need and can't always access. So once again, it was an amazing experience. I think about 160 more bags than the year before. And the best part of that is that Chantel has been approached, and she is actually leading this and mentoring folks in 2 other school districts as they are doing the same thing this year. And there will probably be more school districts that take on an initiative like this because of the work at Cole Putledge Park. So that's my report.
Okay. So the life of the superintendent, not
It's
all
never
doom and
dull.
gloom.
It's
Not
never
all
dull.
doom and gloom.
China was very interesting. Loved it.
And our Director of Human Resources report.
So indeed, on page 15, this is we go through, so we're changing retirement. Bill Sherwood, Manager of Recognition Systems and Services, will retire April 30th after 23 years of service in the district. And we also have a resignation. Florence Jean and ASW David Danier resigned to pursue other avenues after 11 years of service to the district. And Bill will be honored, of course, as the board function student. That's my point.
Okay. And to the Finance Committee, Trustee Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some briefing notes starting on page 16, but I'm going to go over them. I do have 2 recommendations. The Finance Committee was asked to review the current remuneration structure for our school trustees and to recommend a strategy to adjust the rates annually. This report summarizes the work of the Finance Committee and provides a recommendation. The Finance Committee reviewed the remunerations from other BC school districts as well as local municipalities to qualify the relative value of current rates. I think that what I need to explain here is what we have to look at 2 things. First of all, there is a trend line, which is a benchmark across the province, the averages. We're certainly well below that based on our volume of students in our school district. And the other issue really is it's a competitive market. We're looking for good people to run for public office, and certainly we have challenges in the Comox Valley, certainly with the regional district, the city of Courtenay, and the town of Comox. And in doing that, and in saying that, there has to be some type of compensation for those folks to run for public office. There is an expectation that you are going to dedicate yourself, and there's a lot of time. Certainly, being a school trustee takes me an enormous amount of time. I'm not saying that municipalities or regional district don't put in the same time. I'm not saying that at all, but certainly as a trustee for a third term, I will tell you that it is a lot of work. And there needs to be some type of compensation. And if you are to garner from the public an interest in public education and sitting on the board of trustees, then there has to be some compensation. And so that was the rationale behind it. And certainly you can see in there the trend lines for the chair, the vice chair, and trustee remuneration is below the trend line for the province. And so one of the things that we did look at as a committee was to make a recommendation of doing a staging of that adjustment over a 3-year period. And the reason for that, obviously, there is cost to it, and it has an effect on the budget. But we want to make sure that we have a certain portion of that is in place for the next election, so that when it's established what is a trustee remuneration, what it is, we will have the ability to be able to say the board chair is this, the vice chair is this, and each trustee receives that. And so that was part of our process. What I have done is, after some discussion, we have broken down the recommendation into two recommendations, because the second part of our review was to look at establishing a costing for a trustee who is leaving the district to do district work outside the district. And certainly a lot of that time, as you all well know, a number of the conferences and symposiums that we attend are during the week. For those trustees who are employed, have two options. They either take holidays or they take leave without pay from their regular positions, their employment, to go on these. And it was our feeling that there should be some compensation while they are away. And so what our recommendation there was looking at $100 a day for the days of meetings. That would not include travel time there and back. And certainly it would also be deemed as a discretionary claim. If the trustee did not wish to claim that $100, that would be fine. So it would be added to the claim as a discretionary expense. So, in saying all that, I'll move the first recommendation, which is that the Board of Education adjust the trustee's remuneration by $100 per year, or $1,000, sorry, $1,000 per year. Feels like $100. $1,000 per year for each of the next 3 years, effective July the 1st, 2013.
Do we have a seconder for that recommendation?
I'll second that.
Trustee Capricorda. Discussion, comment?
Sure, I'll open it up. The reason we picked the July the 1st, 2013 was that's when our budget starts. And it should be a budget item every year. And so it should be adjusted as such. And it would also ensure that for the next election, there would be an adjustment of almost $2,000 for the next election, so that the stipend would be for each trustee would be $12,400. And that was the rationale behind it.
Okay. Trustee Kate?
While I agree that it's a nice idea, I'm not going to support this motion. I don't support giving myself a raise of approximately 10%. That's what I'm looking at. When we're looking at a budget coming up, where we're looking at cuts, when we're looking at hydro rates, when we're looking at our staff not getting 2.3% or 3%. So fundamentally, I did not run as a trustee for the money. I ran as a trustee because I care about the students and the staff in this district. For me, it's not about the money. It's about the staff and the students and what's happening in the district. So I will not be supporting this motion as presented.
Trustee Weber?
Thanks. So first of all, thank you, Rick and the committee, for taking this on, and appreciate the significant amount of background data that you went through with the support of the Secretary Treasurer. I do accept the rationale behind the thinking. I have 2 points. On the point of the incremental increase that you described, that's something that I would support. I would not support a retroactive. I think a move forward is something that I would consider, but not as it's stated. The piece that I'm wondering if the committee talked about at all is that this leaves the next board, so in 3 years, with the same challenge, because there's, again, this would be something that would be revisited. Was there any consideration to just building into the budgeting process that there would be a certain percentage that at least until this district reflected the average of lake districts?
I'm going to be honest with you, we didn't have that discussion because we felt it would be something that the next board would want to take a look at if they wanted to look at subsequent increases by percentage, that they could establish that. What we wanted to do was, based on what was requested of us, was to look at what the benchmark was and where we were within that benchmark. And so that's where our focus was, rather than to try and second guess what down the road, do an incremental increase by 3% or 4% per year over the next number of years. Was trying to look into a crystal ball as far as we were concerned at this particular time. We were trying to focus in on to draw ourselves to the benchmark that is now established.
If I should...
Well, I think I have some similar concerns. I would be more supportive of something that included, I do agree that there may be a need to increase where we're at now, but in the earlier information that compared us to similar districts of our size, I had a little disagreement about which, that we're just barely into the next one, which runs to districts that are considerably larger than us. So I found the argument based on this mathematics and where the benchmarks was a little not as compelling to me in terms of whether we were at the right place or not. So, but the other piece is I would be looking for a policy that included cost of living allowance as a way to gauge how to stay on top of it. If we need to catch up, what's our way going forward? And I always find a cost of living allowance approach somewhere along there to at least be considered on that basis, to be built right into the policy. So I'm uncomfortable seeing this, same questions of what I'd be looking for in terms of a policy, not particularly there.
If I could make a comment, I understand that with the charts, that even if this motion passed, first of all, if the motion passed, the beneficiaries would be essentially the next board. Most of the increase would be to the credit of the next board. The second thing, it seems to me, even if the motion passed, we would still be quite far behind other districts.
Yes.
And of course, even further behind municipal governments, because they typically have much higher rates of remuneration than school boards do. So we really don't solve all of our problems. We maybe solve a little bit of it. Trustee Weber? Oh, sorry. Trustee Selby?
nobody has really explained why being paid less than other districts is a problem. I've asked a few times why it matters. I certainly didn't become a trustee for the pay. I didn't know what it was before I came on board. And the fact that future trustees or future prospective trustees are going to be enticed with more money doesn't mean more qualified people. I mean, more people, yes, certainly will, pursue election, but I can't see why they're necessarily going to be qualified or why the qualified people would be the ones who get elected. So I'm not sure where the problem is that we're getting less.
I just think to your point around that the benefit would be to the next board, and sort of knowing simple math, is that if we go with this recommendation, it's equal to this board and to the next board, because July 1st is kind of a halfway point in a 3-year cycle. So and that's my issue with going with that.
Are you wishing to make an amendment to the motion with respect to the start date? To make that clearer?
Well, I think that if I would be more comfortable if it would be a future-looking start date, like July of 2014.
Is that an amendment to the motion?
That's a proposed amendment.
Proposed amendment. Do you have a seconder for that amendment? Trustee Selby seconds that amendment. Discussion on the amendment to change the start date from July of 2013 to July 1st of 2014. Discussion on that amendment. Trustee Grennan?
Yeah, I just think that I can appreciate being retroactive is an issue, and I would certainly I would support if it was 1st January 2014. What we need to do is we need to, in respect to the trustees' comments about where we are, the idea is you have to attract the very best, and we have a challenge. And our challenge is that we have 3 municipalities in a regional district who are all looking for elected officials, and we have a Board of Education. And we need to, it's not a competition, but we need to attract people to look at being a school trustee. And part of that, obviously, there are a lot of people out there who want to serve for the public, but they also want to have some type of compensation. And 25 cents an hour is just not going to cut it. And that's the reality. But I would think, in speaking to the motion, if it was the 1st of January 2014, then at least you're getting to you're now stepping it up, and you will at least, for the trustees in the next board, will have at least 2 years in order to adjust if they want to make an adjustment in the remuneration in the future. Having it back, go to 214 is only $1,000, and you're significantly down from the benchmark, the trend line already.
Yes, I'm taking that as a comment opposing the amendment.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything further on the amendment? As the mover, do you want to close the debate on the amendment?
Yeah, I think that Paula raises an excellent point as to the money not ought to be what attracts people anyway, and I don't think it truly does. And to Rick's point as to other people choosing to go to various city councils or regional districts, I don't know if those people would be the best people to be at this table either. I think that, and I was part of a board many years ago that looked at taking part of its money and funding bursaries. And Rick and Jas were part of that board as well, with sort of an embarrassment on the part of the board for having money and there was no money that was going into the system. I think that was all well and good. One of the challenges is that if we never move on, then we remain static. I also think that, and again, this is my opinion as opposed to hearing from other districts, that we appear to be an anomaly in terms of the compensation. And I don't think that we should, as trustees or as public figures, be embarrassed about that. I think it's just a question of that we can explain the rationale, that there's evidence of fairness and good thought through that. And to that degree, I think that it is.
Maybe I could speak to the amendment. It does seem to me that we are so far out of touch with other districts and with other local government authorities that somebody has to be wrong here. Either we have made wrong decisions in the past, or they are continuing to make wrong decisions. Somebody's wrong. There's so much difference between the various bodies. It is an awkward system, I have to say. I wish we didn't have to have this discussion at all and simply had a rate specified by the ministry. It would make much more sense to me. But that's not the case, and so we have to deal with it. So I think we need to vote first on the amendment, and the amendment was to change the start date from July 1, 2013 to July 1, 2014, making it much clearer that it's future-oriented. Can we have, yes?
Just the wording. If you look at for the next 3 years effective, it should be for 3 years effective July the 1st. And just like the next 3 years doesn't seem to be worded correctly. Secretary Treasurer, look at the wording. Is that going to be correct wording? The next 3 years starting or at? Because we changed the start date.
As I read it, the first $1,000 would be July 1, 2014, and then there'd be one for 15 and one for 16.
Just double check on.
I think that's clear. Yeah. Could I call the question on the amendment, please? All those in favor of the amendment? And opposed to the amendment? No. The amendment is carried, so the start date is now changed to 2014. Now back to the main motion. It reads as you see it, except for the start date of 2014. Further discussion on the main motion. Trustee McDonald.
So I think we're in an interesting place where we start to compare ourselves to our municipality, because of course they have a tax base. No, we don't. Our salaries are being paid out of a small piece of the per capita money we receive for each student. So the number of students in our districts is really relevant in terms of our capacity to pay. The capacity of the school district in the Lower Mainland, Vancouver, Surrey, these big districts, they have so many more kids that when you take that, whatever it is, 5 cents per child, that they end up, they amass capacity to pay $20,000 to chairs and trustees. For us, it's a big chunk, bigger chunk on a per capita basis, and we have other needs that we want to address in the district. We sure do. So I look at the numbers. Those trend lines are drawing a line of the average heading across up to some pretty big numbers, and we're in the group that are in pretty small numbers, and we're in the even declining numbers. So when I actually look at, I'm not so interested in the trend line. I'm interested in where we are relative to other districts of our size, and I don't feel we're so far off the mark now. Maybe they're too low. There's a couple of districts that skew really out because they're small, but they're in the Lower Mainland. So they are affected by the rates being paid by the big districts in the Lower Mainland. It would be hard to get somebody in, North Van and West Van perhaps, to say, well, you're going to be $10,000 when the average trustee in Vancouver across the bridge is getting $20,000. So that probably impacts their considerations. But I feel like, you know, where we're at, aside from that trend, which is taking into account what's up at the top, I don't really feel we're all that far off the mark as to where we're at. So I feel the rationale for this particular 3-year phase in and not making a statement of where we go when we get past that point. I don't know. I'd be happy to see the Finance Committee take a look at some other options.
Further comments?
Closing arguments?
Yep.
Well, I think that in making this recommendation, we were given a mandate by the board to come up with some recommendations. And I think we did our due diligence in doing that. The argument here is that we looked at the guidelines, we looked at other school districts of comparable size, what their funding was, looked at our comparison to theirs, and drew the lines. Certainly we're below the average across the province, significantly. And so the adjustment needs to be done, in my opinion, and in the opinion of our committee. And I think that I would ask for your support for the Finance Committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Call a question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion? And all those opposed? Motion is carried.
The second recommendation, Mr. Chair, was to establish a $100 per day meeting conference allowance for actual meetings and conference times outside the school district boundaries, effective December the 1st, 2013. The meetings and conference allowance would not be payable for travel before and after scheduled meetings or conference dates, and it would be deemed as discretionary claim by trustees. In other words, for those trustees who would not wish to claim that $100 a day, they would not have to, because it would be annotated on the claim form, adjusted for the trustees' claim form, a discretionary expense claim of $100 per day.
Is that clear? Is the motion clear? You moving that motion?
I'll move the motion.
And the seconder, please.
I'll second.
Trustee Weber. Discussion on the motion. When you say discretionary, I'm assuming that folks like you and I don't get to claim that, because we're not working.
It's discretionary. Whether you
could.
Discretionary is discretionary. It doesn't matter what your
Okay.
capacity is. It's discretionary.
Trustee Caden.
So once again, I won't be supporting this motion as someone who has a full-time job and over the last 5 years has taken many days off to attend many conferences and workshops, including at this board office. I feel my leave without pay and my trustee remuneration that I've already received makes adequate coverage. And I think that, once again, we're nickel and diming death our students when it comes to this. That's my own personal opinion, so I won't be supporting this motion.
Trustee Weber.
I appreciate that there are occasionally trustees who, because of their day jobs, have less wiggle room than others, than the retired folks, the civil servants. I think there needs to be, and I don't know if this gets at that, I think there needs to be some capacity to support them to participate. I mean, if it is a choice of, I will take a Friday and go to a conference and lose a day's pay, a day's benefit, a day's whatever, I think that is something that trustees, I think as a district, I think we need to account for that in some way. I think the discretionary piece, and to your question of Trustee Grinham, I don't see sort of discretionary in the true sense of, well, if I want to, I can have it, and if I don't want to, I don't. I do think that there needs to be at least some accounting of the need as opposed to the want, if I can frame it that way. For example, we were recently at the BCSDA conference, and that started on a Thursday evening and went through on the Saturday. There may be some at the board table who work on a Saturday and would need to give up pay, but the majority of us, I think the majority of trustees historically don't. So I would think it would be very awkward as a trustee to say, well, yeah, I'll take an extra $100 for that day, in fact, when I'm not giving up anything. So I'm not going to support the motion as it's written, and I don't have any wording at this point. I do support coming back with something that does allow for those trustees who are in situations where they're actually having to give up something that isn't quite made up, to Janice's point, through the modest remuneration they get as trustees. So I won't be supporting the motion as it.
Are you suggesting that you wish to make a motion to refer this back to the finance
That would
committee?
be a good idea, yes. I like that idea. So I'll make that my idea.
Pardon?
And
And trustee
I'd like to second.
you second that motion? So we have a motion on the floor to refer this back to the finance committee to clarify and make more comprehensive the wording about how this discretion works. Is that so? So we have a motion to refer back for further study. Comment on, absolutely comment on that motion?
Well, I'm happy to support that because I have the same concerns. I do feel that in order to make the board accessible to people who work or in very different situations, it's important. People work on weekends, people who do all kinds of things, that a trustee shouldn't be out of pocket per se for the attendance. Often we make things, but I have, and so language for me specifically would be about wage loss. And $100 is not even the full wage for lots of people, but it certainly would make a difference in that. And the other would be around childcare costs, that sometimes our trustees might be incurring additional costs relating to caring for children that they take with them or making alternate arrangements. Let's not include our dogs in that. But those are really tangible things that I think are barriers to equal participation. Now, some elements of the types of conferences we attend as well are, we have a capacity to go to ones that are of interest, and I think it benefits the district that we go to them, but they're not essential to the operation of the board. They're things that work for me. Sometimes I might add a family trip into that day off that I'm taking so that there's all sorts of other sorts of benefit, and it's really the out-of-pocket cost for things that would be deterrents to a particular trustee participating in the same way that any of us would, that we should all have an equal playing field there. That's the piece that's important to me, and I don't think that this got, and I know in the earlier drafts that we commented a bit on this, and I don't see those concerns reflected, and I think another step would probably get us closer to what we're trying to do.
So we have a motion to refer with some indication of why the motion is being referred back to the committee and the kind of wording that would be more acceptable. Call the question on the motion to refer back to the committee for reconsideration. All those in favor? That motion is carried. That recommendation is referred back to the committee for further study. The final recommendation from the Finance Committee is that the board receive the Finance Committee report. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second, trustee Green. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, next item. Board business, the inquiry. Briefing note from the superintendent.
I would refer the board and the gallery to page 21. This is in reference to the Stables report, which came out on November 26, 2013. recall, it came out the day of our November meeting, and I made a commitment there to produce a briefing report that summarizes the recommendations from the Staples report, and that we would have a conversation here in terms of what the report contained, in terms of recommendations, and where this particular board was in terms of those recommendations, and where the previous board was in terms of those recommendations. I won't read the report line by line to you. I'm sure many of you have read it. We just like to just make sure that the salient points are clear. The background to this report, of course, is that the previous Board of Education, not this board, so I need to be very clear about the separation between the two. The previous Board of Education that included, I listed the trustees just so that everyone was clear who was the previous board and who was the new board. The previous board, as part of their work, commissioned a report by Lorena Staples, and it was a report that was an external review of the conduct of themselves, of school trustees, in regard to the operational review. That report was written by her after she interviewed folks, and she worked. In fact, she got ill, so the report took a little longer than one normally would have anticipated. And the report was then released to the superintendent. That would be me at that point in time. And we went through the normative process that we would go through to release a report of that type out into the public. And what the public would expect is that we would seek legal advice to make sure that we are diligent and we are abiding by the legislated tenets around the Freedom of Information Act, which is mediated by the Privacy Commission. So as we went through that process, and we have to be careful that we are mindful of everyone's privacy, there were parts of that report that were forwarded to the Privacy Commissioner by citizens that were involved in the report, in terms of they were either named in the report or their work was named in the report, and that's normal kind of practice. And that report sat in the purvey of the Office of Commissioner for quite a long time, much longer than one would normally expect, from my understanding from our lawyers at least. And so the release of the report came, to be fair to the previous board, came much after their mandate ended. And to be fair to this board, it came after they had started their work and had not seen the report. And so I need to make that really clear. And so that is about two things that occurred. The board that asked for the report would have expected it to be done in a timely way, and the report writer became very ill, and there was nothing that could be done, and that was not the previous board's fault, and there was nothing that could be done, and there was nothing I could do to move the report any faster. She just unfortunately became very ill for quite a long time, and then when she was well enough, finished the report and then wrote the report in summary, summarized it and reported. This board had no ability to reflect on the report or to even to know what the recommendations were as they started their work as a new board. And so they saw the report virtually within the same time frame that it was released on November 26th of this year. So the time between when it was commissioned and the time when it was released to the public was long. And what it did was it put a big gap between the previous board and the board of the day. So what I tried to do in my briefing note is to be really clear that the work was commissioned by the previous board, and that the previous board did not get to see it before the end of their mandate and did not have an opportunity to move ahead on any of the recommendations because they had finished their term of office and another board had taken place, and that the new board had no ability to reflect on the report or change their practice or to even look at the recommendations because the report did not come to them till now, almost 2/3 of the way through their mandate. What I've done then is taken the summary of recommendations from Ms. Staples, and I've done my very best, and the work is mine to do. That's to be really clear. To be fair to the previous board, I am for lack of a better word, the only one left standing from that time that has any history with this. And to be fair to this board, they were not here when the board was commissioned. This is a different board. So it is for me to do that. I've been holding that work in, I guess, stewardship from the previous board and keeping this board distant from the report and its recommendations so that they would not be seen to have any influence on a report that they hadn't commissioned. So where we are on the bottom of page 21 is I wanted to make sure that I was clear that the previous board did, early in the first year of their mandate, invite BC School Trustees Association Executive Director Stephen Hansen to speak about governance, and that is in response to Ms. Staples recommends in the report that the school district require mandatory attendance of trustees at training in board governance and ethics, and I need to provide evidence that the board of the day did meet with Stephen Hansen to speak about governance early on in their mandate. And that during the mandate of the previous board, about whom the Staples report was written, trustees and senior leaders worked with facilitator Stacey Holloway, who provided guidance in the areas of governance, respectful communication, and positive culture building. And in fact, Ms. Holloway did provide a report to the previous board, and that report is a public document, and there's the link that it is, that is the reference point for it. Then, a new board was elected, and the new board actually continued on with some of the original work facilitated by Ms. Holloway, particularly around their interest in respectful communication and positive culture building. And also Ms. Holloway provided an orientation session with senior staff and the new board in terms of working together and the normative kind of thing that you would often see boards do. Many boards will do initially in the beginning of their mandate the kind of work that would be about positive culture building and building positive relations, agreements about how people communicate with each other and what people's terms of reference, and an explanation of what people's roles are. And that work was completed by this board with Ms. Holloway. And then, and certainly through the mandate of this board has continued to be guided by bylaw 1005 in the areas of open and respectful manner, and confidentiality and conduct at meetings. But this is a bylaw that's been in effect in this school district since 1999, and it speaks to, it's in the very front end of our policy now, and it's manual, and it speaks to both the responsibilities and the rights of trustees. This current board has worked diligently on the development of a strategic visioning for the district, and if you are a regular attender at our board meetings, you would have heard the previous board chair, Mr. Weber, speaking about the work that is graphically represented, and certainly at Education Committee you have heard both senior staff and trustees talk about the development of strategic visioning. You'll see that proof of that in the, for example, in the way the agenda is set up, and you'll see headings over there that talk about education evolution and engaging our community that are actually part of how this board chooses to platform the work that they do. And so that has come from their abilities to work together and their decisions about governance and leading learning in our district. On page 22, Ms. Staples, number 4, commented about the RFP process involved in the operational review. She recommended that reflection occur regarding the district's RFP process, and this scrutiny has taken place under the watchful eye of the the Assistant Secretary Treasurer Ron Amos, who is a financial person, staff member who bridges the previous board and this new board, and certainly under the leadership of our new Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Horswell. And so the policy as it stands is Board Policy 3003, and it's written there. And that is the policy that has been adopted because it is in compliance with the Trade, Investment and Labour Mobility Agreement executed by the province of BC, which is a fancy way of saying this is the one you have to have. This is the way that government expects you to go through purchasing and procurement, and it's an expectation that all ministries are guided this way. And certainly that is the way that this board and the senior staff have been doing their business. And at this point in time, we have no local issues of no non-compliance with the policy. And really, that's really where we are. And what I would say to summarize is that the recommendations that Ms. Staples made were recommendations that she was making and intended to make to the previous board. And she was unable to do so because she did not finish her report before the previous board finished the mandate, and that this board, this new board, is 2/3 of the way up through the mandate. And in my opinion, as a senior leader and having been in education a long time, I believe that this board is working in the spirit of the recommendations, that she has made, and that, to be fair to the previous board, they never did have an opportunity to see the recommendations, and so were not able to either choose to move and change direction or to reflect and affirm the direction that they were taking. They simply didn't have that opportunity before they were finished with their member. And that's my reflection on the document, and I would be open to questions from trustees.
Question from trustees who I hope are keeping a watchful eye on the clock, because as you know, we must adjourn at 9 o'clock according to our bylaws. So, questions for the superintendent on the inquiry. Trustee
I'm consummate clock watcher. So I'd like to, first of all, thank you, Superintendent Elwood, for your stewardship of this over the last
3 years.
3 years. The road to transparency and accountability is a long and winding one, and a bumpy one. And I do appreciate the points of the challenges that Ms. Staples had in terms of her own health issues to get things moving. But that notwithstanding, I think it's quite well understood that it took a great deal of effort to even get it to a point of having a conversation about this item at the board table. And for that, I'm indebted to Stacey Holloway, because it was her report that triggered public conversation at this table about where to go. And I'm also indebted to the previous board for supporting the motion to have the review undertaken. The part that I'd like some feedback from you and from the Secretary Treasurer, and it's not feedback in the moment, so perhaps just for you to think about, is that the recommendations are all well and good, but there really aren't any provisions in there to stop a board, a future board, from having one or two trustees in a leadership position drag a board down a rabbit hole. What I'm interested in, and again for future feedback, is what is a secretary treasurer, what does a superintendent require in terms of a commitment from a board as an entity to feel comfortable to say this is wrong and bringing it to or this is questionable, or this is a concern and bringing it to the larger board for a conversation. So I'll leave that. And appreciate you doing that.
Further comment? Nope. I think we should move on. We have a very important policy on workplace bullying and harassment. Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. So this policy was brought to you in October, and this is a housekeeping item that has come up as a requirement of some new information from WorkSafe, who've reviewed this document and had a look at it. So it's a change in the definition to A. So that's the first change. You see the part that has been eliminated in the new definition that must be included in the policy. And then on page 24, B1 or 1B, individuals believe they have been bullied or harassed must report the incident versus should. And those are just housekeeping changes from WorkSafe, and the rest of the policy has been vetted by WorkSafe and is in compliance. So it's just those two. So the recommendation is that the board adopt the policy.
Move the recommendation. Second.
Trustee Weber moved it. Trustee Grinham seconded. The recommendation is that the board adopt the new regulation as amended. As presented here. Okay. Discussion on the motion. May I say again that this is an extremely important policy, and if you are in the slightest bit concerned about it, now's the time. No? No further comment on that? Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Thank you. And now to the public question period. And we give the members of the press the first crack if they wish to speak. They pass. Others in the audience. especially those with bad legs.
Sort of in the same vein as trustee Weber, is everything's great and fine in the report as far as recommendations, but there's really nothing in there that implements that this couldn't happen again if somebody so chooses to make certain decisions. And is there something in place to empower an individual trustee to come forward if they perceive a problem without fear of retribution? Maybe that's kind of a discuss policy.
Yeah.
So can I answer that?
Superintendent?
So if you're asking about, and I'm just thinking about just making a connection back to what Trustee Weber said, if your question asked about is there anything in place that would actually that would be support, I think, a trustee coming forward and saying, I'm really not comfortable with what's going on, or that we're not following our what I interpret as. It's a very interesting one. We serve two masters in many ways. And so we have a huge reporting piece and liability piece. In fact, as a superintendent, I am the only person who can go to jail if things don't work in the school district. But I serve that the second master is the Ministry of Education. But my employer and is the board, and the board is whom I take my direction from. And there is nothing that there is nothing in my personal services contract, or certainly in board policy, that demands and has consequences for a superintendent. That demands that a superintendent, for example, or a senior leader, can work always in an environment that is trusting and respectful. And so it is the piece about the trusting, respectful relationships between senior leaders and trustees and trustees and trustees, and all of that that's in place. And so there are, I'm not even certain that you could write a bylaw or a policy that would actually have any efficacy if those relationships are not there. Now, do they exist in policy? No. Now, is our school district different than any other? Not particularly. Does the ministry have an overarching piece of legislation or piece of the School Act that could come in right now and they could intervene? No. That does not exist, and that's something that the Superintendent's Association, and I have a role on the Superintendent's Association, and I know the BC ASBO, the Secretary Treasurers Association, is looking at speaking with the ministry about that, and also I think the BCSTA is looking at it as well. But really, all of that is about people working together for a common good and feeling safe enough to share an opinion and believe that they can be heard, and that's trustees as well. And so right now, currently, when you look at our bylaws, there's no reason for them not to work. There's no reason for them not to create respectful workplaces, because all the words are correct. They're all written very well, but it is the human interpretation of the words, and it's a human experience. A school district is a human organization, no different than any other, and that's something we have to be mindful all the time. So could it happen again? Whatever it is, yes, potentially it could. Your best defense is to have transparent governance, to have open and honest working relationships, for everyone to understand what everyone's roles are and to be settled and accepting of that, and for people to know what people's work is and what their work is not, and for people to always remind themselves and each other of what the ultimate goal is, and that's, in our case, working on behalf of students. That's the benchmark that can often get you through very difficult conversations.
If I could add another comment, as an educational organization, we tend to believe in education and training. And so when the new board members arrived here, we were, I speak personally, horrified to find out that the staff wanted us to do about 120 hours of training, for which we
We enjoyed every minute.
wiggled and complained
And,
and rolled your eyes.
But that's what they believe in. They believe that education is the answer. And if you're in a school district, that's what you always believe in. And so the new board, together with some, what do we call them, leftovers? Or members of the old board, we engaged, we literally sat around banging ideas off each other for 120 hours. I calculated it. You know, I had agreement. And so that's the best we can do with the current legislation. What you want, I think, or what you're headed towards is whistleblower legislation. We just don't have it. Julie?
I think as an individual trustee, some of the tools that we have at the board table are processed. Robert's rules. A trustee does have a capacity to challenge a decision, to challenge a ruling of the board. And one can then be overruled, of course, depending on the circumstances. But it is a place where if you have a sense of correct position and whether the process has been followed and feel that it hasn't, and you can do your homework and have that support, it is not always easy, but one can at least get the issue on the table. It may still be overruled, but it is publicly on the table that there was a concern and that other people in the situation scrutinizing it people may reflect themselves on whether there's merit and they should reconsider. The public may be made aware of it. It becomes grounds ultimately for challenges to those rulings or actions. So there is a place where it is just about the degree of education and preparedness, and then the degree of backbone or how frequently you want to be in a dispute. If that's the type of situation, and I have been on boards that have had huge challenges and difficulties, and other boards that have been collegial where Robert's rules are not needed, or neither is that type of. But methods that will get the issue out, even if you lose, it has been on the table that there's another way to view it. I think that's an effective tool. Questions for you?
Yeah. All right, another question from the gang?
Well, I'm just piecing this all together here. Now, what I see is that the bylaw 1005 has been in place since 1999. So nothing has changed since then. So there was an issue with the prior board. You're saying the current board went through 120 hours of training and that. So then my thought goes to, hey, that sounds like a great idea. The board needs, say, 120 hours of training. So let's move forward to the next set of elections. Half the board stays, half the board leaves. So half the board's going to say, I've already had 120 hours of training. The new board, so then where do you draw the line? And then the election after that, you've now got nobody left over. So is there any way of putting in there that there is a certain amount of training that is mandatorily required?
Well, you know, I think the answer just lies in who makes up the new board and the discretion that they have. But I mean, you know, if your prediction is accurate about the elections, then there will be enough trustees on the new board who have had these experiences to be able to assure the newcomers that was a good idea, you know, and we'd better do it again. And the training, I maybe gave the wrong impression. A lot of it was collaborative, and it was an exercise in learning to trust each other, and to work in a collaborative way. So it wasn't so much the content of the training as going through the exercise together.
And if I could, and to be fair, every board faces this because boards turn over, as you described. And what happens is that the experienced veteran trustees who move from board to board and stay on the board, they become the trainers. they become the sharers of the knowledge. They become the people who have the history. And so senior staff plays a very different role. We play a secondary role in some of that, in terms of the explanation of what the roles and responsibilities are. Because we will do that with a brand new board because there's no one to bring that information forward. But very often what happens is your veteran trustees become the advocates for the training, as Peter describes, but also become part of the facilitation of the conversation. So it isn't that they opt out. I've never ever experienced that they would opt out because they already know it. It is that they become, actually the conversation's richer, and then they become part of the image of the conversation.
And just to add on to that, through our BCSD organization, every December, and especially after new boards are elected, we have a new trustee academy where we actually meet as a board and go through that process. We work with our association and our fellow trustees on working together in collaboration, that trust and respect, and working with our senior staff. So even though you don't see it, it is working there. And through our organization, they provide a really good workshop and mentoring for boards, new boards especially, to go through that. So it is there. And I know that every board that I've been on, we've taken that opportunity as whether as a trustee we choose to follow that. So as a board, it's there. We go forward. It's what you do with it the next step. So that is the process. It's there, and I think we all embrace it.
I think I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?